The disappearance of Rebecca REUSCH remains one of Germany's most baffling and widely covered missing person cases. The 15-year-old vanished without a trace on February 18, 2019 from Berlin, sparking an extensive police investigation and widespread public speculation. Despite years of searching, nobody has been found, yet authorities strongly suspect that she was silenced. On the evening of February 17, 2019, Rebecca stayed at her eldest sister's home in Berlin's Britz district. Her sister lived there with her husband and their young daughter. That night, Rebecca's brother-in-law was attending a party with his colleagues, leaving Rebecca and her sister alone in the house. She had planned to sleep on the couch and go directly to school the next morning since her classes had a delayed start that day. Her brother-in-law returned home from the party at approximately 5:45 a.m. and went to bed around 7 a.m. By then, Rebecca's sister had already left for work with her daughter, meaning Rebecca and her brother-in-law were the only ones left in the house. Shortly after, at 7:15 a.m., Rebecca's mother attempted to call her, but the call was sent straight to voicemail. A digital analysis later revealed that Rebecca's phone last connected to the home Wi-Fi at 7:46 a.m. Her mother tried calling again at 8:25 a.m., but once more, the call went directly to voicemail. At some point between 7 a.m. and 7:46 a.m., Rebecca sent a Snapchat message to a friend. Since Snapchat messages disappear after being viewed, the exact time of the photo is unknown. Her friend opened it at 8:15 a.m. and later described it as showing Rebecca standing in a hallway, dressed in a hoodie, a pink plush jacket, ripped jeans, and black and white trainers. This was the last confirmed contact from Rebecca. When Rebecca failed to arrive at school by 9:40 a.m. and did not return home that afternoon, her family reported her missing. Several of her belongings also vanished, including the clothes she was seen wearing in the Snapchat message, her Vans backpack, pink handbag, purse, and mobile phone. Additionally, a purple blanket from her sister's home was missing, an item that would later become a crucial point of interest in the investigation. The police investigation soon focused on Rebecca's brother-in-law. Authorities found it significant that her phone last connected to Wi-Fi, while only he was in the house. Initially, he claimed to have been asleep that morning. However, digital forensic evidence revealed that he had been awake and had been searching for pornographic material related to bondage and strangulation. Another crucial piece of evidence was the use of his raspberry red Renault Twingo on the morning of February 18th. According to traffic cameras and mobile data, the car was driven along the A12 motorway between Berlin and Poland at around 10:47 a.m., well after Rebecca had already disappeared. The car made a second trip along the same highway later that evening. Police were never able to establish a legitimate reason for these journeys. Adding to the suspicion, a witness reported seeing a similar vehicle parked in a wooded area near Kummersdorf on the same day. Two horseback riders also described seeing a man acting suspiciously in that area around midday. Authorities thoroughly searched the location, but no significant evidence was recovered. In 2020, German authorities submitted a request to Google for stored data related to Rebecca and her brother-in-law. Google provided the information in early 2021, but the details have never been publicly disclosed. Then, in April 2023, police conducted another search of the suspect's home. This time, they performed acoustic tests and searched for objects that could be linked to strangulation. However, no arrests or significant breakthroughs followed. Despite years of investigation, Rebecca's case remains unsolved. Her family continues to hold on to hope that she is still alive, though law enforcement believes she was silenced, most likely on the morning of February 18th. The case has often been compared to the disappearance of Madeleine McCann, due to its extensive media coverage and the many unanswered questions surrounding what truly happened. Years later, Rebecca's disappearance remains one of Germany's most haunting mysteries. Her family's search for answers continues, as does the public's speculation about the case. Without new evidence or a confession, what really happened to Rebecca may never be known. The disappearance of 17-year-old SHELBIE LYNN DWYER has sparked nationwide concern, as the FBI has now taken over the case, intensifying efforts to locate the missing Washington teenager. SHELBIE was reported missing by her family in March 2023, after she failed to return from a trip to Mexico. Despite relentless efforts from both local authorities and her loved ones, the search has now entered its 14th month, leaving her family in deep distress and uncertainty. SHELBIE's family, who reside in Washington, immediately alerted local law enforcement when she stopped responding to messages and calls. According to her family, she had initially informed them that she planned to travel to Mexico with a friend. However, when her communication became sporadic and then completely ceased, their worry grew. Realizing something was wrong, they sought help from the authorities, who launched an investigation into her disappearance. Due to the complexity of the case and its international scope, the Federal Bureau of Investigation has now taken charge. Special Agent Steve Vio from the FBI's Seattle office revealed that investigators have traced SHELBIE's last known whereabouts to Tijuana, Mexico. It is believed that she traveled there by car, though details surrounding her movements after that remain unclear. At the time of SHELBIE's disappearance, the US State Department had issued travel advisories, warning about potential dangers in the specific region where she was last seen. This has only heightened concerns for her safety, as law enforcement and her family fear that she may have encountered danger while in Mexico. As the investigation continues, the FBI is actively seeking any information that could help locate SHELBIE. To encourage the public to come forward, authorities have announced a reward of up to $5,000 for information leading to her discovery. Anyone with knowledge of her whereabouts is urged to contact their local FBI office, the nearest US embassy or consulate, or submit a tip online through official channels. Throughout this heartbreaking ordeal, SHELBIE's family has remained desperate for answers. They continue to plead for the public's help, hoping that someone out there has the information needed to bring her home. Law enforcement and her loved ones are determined to find out what happened and, most importantly, reunite her with her family. Until then, the search for SHELBIE LYNN DWYER remains ongoing, with authorities doing everything possible to uncover the truth behind her sudden and mysterious disappearance. Maria KRAUS, a 38-year-old woman originally from Pennsylvania, vanished under mysterious circumstances on February 10, 2025. She was last seen in North Versailles, Pennsylvania, and has not been heard from since. Her sudden disappearance has left her loved ones deeply worried, especially her boyfriend, who told investigators that he believes she may be in danger. The last confirmed sighting of Maria was around 8:45 a.m. that morning. However, later that afternoon, around 2:30 p.m., a witness reported seeing a woman matching her description walking along McKeesport Boulevard. Authorities have not been able to confirm whether this person was Maria. Shortly after she went missing, a search was launched and her car was discovered abandoned on the east side of McKeesport Boulevard. Strangely, there was no sign of Maria nearby, and investigators found no immediate clues to explain what might have happened. Her disappearance only grew more concerning when her family pointed out that if she'd been experiencing car trouble, whether she ran out of gas or had a breakdown, she would have called them for help instead of simply walking away. The location where her car was found raised even more questions, The area is near several metalworking plants, railroad tracks, and a river. If Maria had left on foot, she would have had a difficult time finding assistance. Some people think she might have ended up in the water, but there's no proof to support this idea. One of the first things police attempted to do was track her phone. However, when her family tried calling her, they discovered that her phone had been turned off, which only heightened their fears for her safety. Despite further searches in the days following her disappearance, no trace of Maria was found. Some residents reported seeing emergency rescue trucks towing boats and several police officers near the Westinghouse Bridge, leading to speculation that authorities were searching the nearby river. However, officials have not confirmed whether this was related to Maria's case. Weeks passed, and Maria's family continued to appeal to the public for help. They took part in search efforts, hoping for any lead that could bring them closer to finding her. But despite their efforts, no new information has surfaced. Her case remains open, and the Allegheny Police Department's General Investigations Unit is leading the search for answers. Authorities urge anyone with information to contact them at 412-473-1251. For now, Maria KRAUS remains missing, and her loved ones are left desperate for answers. In April 2024, 19-year-old KALIE GOODWIN was living in Baytown, Texas, when she suddenly vanished without a trace. Fears quickly arose that she may have been kidnapped and fallen victim to foul play. At the time of her disappearance, KALIE was residing in an apartment complex on Decker Drive. The last confirmed sighting of her was on April 21st, when she was seen leaving the complex around 7 p.m. However, she never returned home that night, and by the following day, her family grew deeply concerned. KALIE's mother got a scary phone call that made her very scared. Two men contacted her, claiming that they had KALIE and demanded a ransom of $600 for her safe return. They provided details for a Cash App account where the money was to be transferred. To her horror, KALIE's mother could hear her daughter crying in the background, pleading for help. KALIE said the men had been assaulting her, leaving her mother in shock and fear for her daughter's life. Realizing the severity of the situation, KALIE's mother immediately reported the ransom call to the police, and an investigation was launched. In the days that followed, authorities uncovered alarming details about what may have happened to her. Witnesses reported seeing KALIE getting into a car with an unknown man near her apartment. Investigators later determined that she was taken to South Houston, specifically to an area near the South Post Oak neighborhood. Further investigation found a connection between the car she was seen in and the Cash App account used in the ransom demand. The vehicle was registered to the girlfriend of a man named Juan Sergio Flowers, a known criminal who had previously been implicated in another violent case where a woman was murdered. This raised serious concerns about KALIE's safety. Authorities then traced the phone call made to KALIE's mother and discovered it had been placed from a device belonging to 55-year-old Kevin Patterson. As the investigation continued, both Patterson and Flowers were named as suspects in her disappearance. Adding to the horrifying nature of the case, the woman involved in Flowers' other criminal case was found dead just 12 days after KALIE went missing. Flowers is now facing additional charges related to KALIE's case, deepening fears that she may have met a similar fate. Patterson, meanwhile, was already wanted on unrelated charges. When authorities finally tracked him down, they searched his residence and discovered evidence linking him to KALIE's disappearance. He was promptly taken into custody. Police believe that after being removed from Patterson's home, KALIE was transported to Southwest Houston. However, they have not released any further details about what may have happened to her. Despite their efforts, KALIE remains missing, and investigators suspect she is still somewhere in Houston. As time passes, KALIE's family grows increasingly desperate for answers. They have not heard from her since that chilling ransom call, and with no updates on her whereabouts, they fear the worst. Anyone with information about KALIE Goodwin's disappearance is urged to contact the Baytown Police Department at 2814-228-371. Her loved ones are still holding on to hope, but until new leads emerge, the mystery of what happened to KALIE remains unsolved. The case of Matthew and Philip REAGAN remains one of the most perplexing and tragic unsolved mysteries in recent years. The two brothers, originally from Ohio, set out on a cross-country road trip in March 2020 with the ultimate goal of relocating Philip to California for a new job. Their journey, filled with adventure and sightseeing, came to an abrupt and devastating end in a remote area near Sawmill, Arizona, on the Navajo Nation Reservation. On March 21st, 2020, the bodies were discovered, both fatally shot multiple times, leaving investigators and their grieving family desperate for answers. Philip REAGAN, 29, had recently accepted a job at the Montecito Sequoia Lodge, located in the Sequoia National Forest of Central California. He had been feeling anxious about the move, confiding in his family that he felt jobless and homeless, with no choice but to take this opportunity. His older brother, Matthew REAGAN, 39, a married father of 5, decided to accompany him on the journey. Matthew worked as an engineer, specializing in the design of heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems, a career that often required him to travel across the country for work. The two brothers set off westward in an SUV, maintaining frequent contact with their family as they traveled. Their trip appeared to be going as planned, with stops at well-known landmarks along the way. They visited the iconic U-Drop Inn Cafe on Route 66 in Shamrock, Texas, and even shared a photo in front of the Conoco gas station, a recognizable landmark that inspired the animated film KRAUS. However, as they crossed from Texas into New Mexico, their communication with family became less frequent, likely due to poor cell service in remote areas. The last known contact from the brothers came in the form of a Skype call between Matthew and his wife Faye from Shamrock, Texas. This would be the final time she saw her husband and brother-in-law alive. On March 21st, the brothers were en route to Cañón de Chelly, a national monument famous for its ancient ruins and Native American rock carvings. At some point, they relied on GPS navigation to guide them through the unfamiliar landscape. Investigators later determined that their GPS had mistakenly directed them onto an unpaved road near Sawmill, Arizona, a rugged and isolated area covered in snow and mud at the time. Their Ford SUV became stuck, approximately half a mile from the location where their bodies would later be found. Stranded and unable to move their vehicle, the brothers attempted to walk back toward a gas station, likely hoping to find help. Tragically, they never made it. At some point during their trek, both men were shot multiple times. A passing driver later spotted the brothers lying partially on the road. Due to the remote location, they had to search for cell phone service before they could contact authorities. The first officers to arrive on the scene were members of the Navajo Tribal Police, soon followed by deputies from the Apache County Sheriff's Office. However, because the crime had taken place on the Navajo Nation Reservation and involved non-Native American victims, jurisdictional complexities meant that the case was handed over to the FBI for further investigation. Determining investigative authority in crimes that occur on tribal land is often a complicated process. Law enforcement must consider both the identity of the victims and any potential suspects before assigning responsibility. In this case, the FBI took charge, actively seeking information from the public to uncover leads. Despite their efforts, no suspect has ever been identified. Authorities have not disclosed any known motives, nor have they suggested that the REAGAN brothers had any ties to individuals who might have wished to harm them. The circumstances of their deaths raise troubling questions. Given that they were stranded in an unfamiliar area, it seems unlikely that they had any prior connection to their killer. Despite ongoing investigations, the case of Matthew and Philip REAGAN remains unsolved. The FBI continues to urge anyone with information to come forward, holding on to the hope that even the smallest piece of evidence could finally bring answers. This case serves as a haunting reminder of how quickly a journey filled with hope, excitement, and new beginnings can take a tragic and unexplained turn, leaving behind only unanswered questions and an enduring sense of loss. The mystery surrounding the disappearance and passing of 50-year-old Judith Smith, better known to her friends and family as Judy, occurred almost 3 decades ago. To this day, it has not been determined who is responsible. Judy originally hailed from Massachusetts, and as an adult, she paid for her college education. After graduating, she began working as a healthcare nurse. Her friends and family describe her as a kind, compassionate person who would do anything to help someone in need. Her first 2 marriages ended in divorce, but she and her second husband had 2 children together. By 1996, she was married to a lawyer named Jeffrey Smith, whom she met while caring for his father, who had undergone throat surgery and was still in recovery. The couple seemed happy, and the following year, Jeffrey was invited to the Northeast Pharmaceutical Conference in Philadelphia, where he served as a legal representative. He asked Judy to accompany him, and she agreed, since they had never been on a trip together. The conference was scheduled to take place from April 9th to April 11th, and afterward, Judy and Jeffrey planned to travel to New Jersey to meet up with some friends. But this trip would take an unexpected turn. Before they even left for Philadelphia, a problem arose. Judy had forgotten to pack her driver's license. Without proper identification, she wasn't allowed to board the plane. Rather than delaying the trip, they decided that Jeffrey would fly to Philadelphia as planned, while Judy would take a later flight. She arrived the next day, and everything seemed fine. On the morning of April 10th, Jeffrey left for the conference. Before he left, Judy told him she planned to spend the morning sightseeing. Since they were attending a cocktail party at the hotel that evening, they agreed to meet back at their room at 5:30 p.m. Jeffrey arrived on time, but Judy was nowhere to be found. At first, he assumed she had gone ahead to the party without him. But when he checked the event, she was not there either. That's when he realized something was wrong. Her wallet, wedding ring, engagement ring, and backpack were missing, but all of her clothes and other belongings were still in the hotel room. When she still hadn't returned by midnight, Jeffrey contacted the police, but to his frustration, he was told that he couldn't file a missing person report until she had been gone for 24 hours, something that isn't true. Desperate, he reached out to Philadelphia's mayor, Ed Rendell, who was also attending the conference. Finally, the police began investigating. From the start, authorities were suspicious of Jeffrey. In most missing person cases, those closest to the victim are investigated first. However, there was no solid evidence linking him to Judy's disappearance. Soon, witnesses came forward with reports of possible sightings. Some claimed to have seen her boarding a Greyhound bus leaving Philadelphia. Others described her as acting strangely, rambling incoherently, as if she were confused or disoriented. One of the most credible reports came from a cashier at the Deptford Mall in New Jersey, about 22 miles away. She recalled speaking with a woman who matched Judy's description. The woman mentioned that she was shopping for clothes for her daughter, and she was carrying a red backpack, just like the one Judy often used. She also brought up the Philadelphia conference, which convinced the cashier that it had to be her. But after that, the trail went cold. Months passed with no answers, until September 7th, 1997. That day, hikers exploring Pisgah National Forest in North Carolina made a disturbing discovery. Deep in the woods, they found human remains wrapped in a blue blanket. The body was later identified as Judy Smith. She had been found nearly 600 miles away from where she was last seen. Even more bizarrely, she was wearing unfamiliar clothes and a pair of sunglasses her family didn't recognize. Her red backpack was missing. How she ended up in North Carolina remains a complete mystery. Over time, some investigators speculated that Judy may have been a victim of Gary Michael Hilton, a serial killer known as the National Forest Killer, who was active in that region. However, no concrete evidence connected him to her case, and no arrests were ever made. To this day, the mystery of Judy Smith's disappearance and death remains unsolved. Was she taken against her will, or did she leave Philadelphia voluntarily? Why was she reportedly seen acting strangely? And most importantly, who was responsible for her tragic fate? Decades later, these questions remain unanswered. Melissa Lemon, a 39-year-old woman, mysteriously vanished in Tampa, Florida on July 14, 2023. Her sudden disappearance has raised deep concerns, as she went missing shortly after being dropped off at the Frontier Travel Park to meet someone she had been communicating with online. Despite ongoing searches and investigations, there has been no sign of Melissa, leaving her loved ones desperate for answers. At the time of her disappearance, Melissa was living in Lutz, Florida, a quiet town located about 15 miles from Tampa. Known for its suburban charm and peaceful environment, Lutz was where she called home. However, on the scorching afternoon of July 14th, Melissa's plans took her to Tampa, a much larger and busier city. A relative dropped her off at the well-known Frontier Travel Park, a location situated along Nebraska Avenue. She had arranged to meet an individual she had been chatting with on Facebook, hoping to get to know them better in person. Unfortunately, Melissa never made it to her intended meeting place, and from that moment on, she seemingly vanished without a trace. Her family became increasingly worried when she failed to return home and did not answer any calls or messages. Fearing the worst, they promptly reported her missing to the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, urging authorities to investigate and help locate her. Since that day, no new information has surfaced regarding her whereabouts. The circumstances surrounding her disappearance remain unclear, and despite extensive efforts by both law enforcement and her family, the case remains unsolved. Melissa's loved ones continue to hold on to hope, refusing to give up on finding her. They urge anyone who may have seen or heard something that could help to come forward. As time passes, the mystery of what happened to Melissa Lemon only deepens, leaving a community searching for answers and a family longing for her safe return. The case of Martin DICKHOFF remains one of the most baffling unsolved disappearances in recent years. The 44-year-old Dutchman vanished without a trace after a brief trip to Belgium, leaving behind a string of puzzling clues, but no definitive answers. Despite extensive investigations conducted by both Dutch and Belgian authorities, his whereabouts remain unknown, turning his disappearance into a haunting mystery. Martin was a well-respected businessman who had lived in Alphen aan den Rijn for 25 years. He ran a successful tiling company, had no known financial troubles, and was deeply connected with his family. By all accounts, his life was stable, with no apparent reason for him to disappear. However, everything changed on January 23, 2014, when he decided to take a short trip to the Belgian coastal city of Ostend. That evening, Martin checked into the Andromeda Hotel at precisely 11:15 p.m. Shortly after, he headed to the Casino Coursol, a popular gambling spot in the area. Surveillance footage captured him inside the casino, but rather than focusing on the games, he appeared distracted, frequently checking his phone and seeming restless. At 12:30 a.m., he left the casino, and for several hours his movements remained unclear. Eventually, Martin returned to his hotel at around 4 a.m. His van was then seen exiting the underground parking garage, though he never officially checked out of his room. The last confirmed sighting of Martin came at 4:52 a.m. when he stopped at a gas station in Drongen, Belgium, to refuel and purchase a coffee. CCTV footage showed him alone, acting normally with no visible distress. After that, he drove away, and his journey became increasingly erratic. When Martin failed to return home, his concerned family reported him missing on January 25th. Investigators began retracing his steps and discovered a strange pattern in his movements. Before he visited the casino, Martin had briefly driven back to the Netherlands, stopping at a gas station in Gouda, and later purchasing coffee at McDonald's. Then, for reasons unknown, he drove back to Belgium, returning to the same casino for a second time that night. This unusual behavior puzzled authorities, raising more questions than answers. Using his vehicle's onboard computer and cell phone data, police reconstructed his final route. After leaving Ostend, Martin initially drove toward Rotterdam, stopping in Drongen for coffee. From there, he headed north toward Antwerp before suddenly switching off his phone near Wesley at 5:16 a.m. However, his van was still traceable, continuing toward the Dutch border near Zelzate, before unexpectedly turning back into Belgium. After this, all traces of Martin and his vehicle disappeared. Over a month later, on February 26th, Belgian police made a shocking discovery. Martin's black Volkswagen Transporter van was found abandoned in a parking lot near a fastened electric vehicle charging station in Aalst, approximately 45 kilometers from Ostend. Strangely, his van was not electric, making its location at a charging station all the more unusual. The vehicle had reportedly been sitting there since 6 a.m. on January 24th, just minutes after Martin's last confirmed sighting. A parking ticket was placed on the windshield, indicating that local authorities had noticed the van, but had no reason to investigate until Martin was officially reported missing. Inside the van, police found no traces of Martin. His wallet, phone, passport, and keys were missing, yet a small suitcase remained inside. Oddly, his clothes were neatly folded within the suitcase, giving the impression that he had carefully packed them before disappearing. The eerie sense of organization raised further questions. Did Martin plan to leave on his own, or was he forced to abandon his vehicle under suspicious circumstances? Investigators searched the surrounding area, questioning vendors at a nearby weekly market, hotel employees, and other travelers who had used the charging station. However, no one recalled seeing Martin or anything out of the ordinary. With no clear leads, authorities developed two main theories about his disappearance. The first theory suggests that Martin may have taken his own life, deliberately ensuring that he would never be found. However, those close to him strongly contest this idea, as he showed no prior signs of distress or suicidal intentions. Additionally, his erratic driving pattern and return trips to the casino did not indicate a carefully planned exit from his life. The second theory speculates that Martin may have been the victim of foul play, possibly connected to gambling debts or an encounter with the wrong person. Yet, investigators found no evidence of financial troubles, and there were no known reports of a violent altercation. If someone else was involved in his disappearance, they left no trace behind. As the years pass, Martin DICKHOFF's case remains an unsettling mystery. With no conclusive evidence, his fate is still unknown, leaving his loved ones without closure. His disappearance is a haunting reminder of how a person can seemingly vanish without a trace, leaving behind only unanswered questions. The mystery of Rachel Marie Mellon SKEMP's disappearance remains one of Illinois' most haunting, unsolved cases. Born on October 13, 1982, Rachel grew up in Bolingbrook, Illinois, with her mother, Amy, and stepfather, Vincent Mellon. She also had two younger half-siblings, Jason and Ashley. However, her life was marked by instability, as her stepfather had a history of violence. Despite the turmoil at home, Rachel was known as a bright, bubbly, and kind-hearted girl, someone who excelled in school and was deeply loved by her friends. Rachel shared a particularly close bond with her biological father, Jeff SKEMP, who lived in Texas. In the summer of 1995, she visited him and expressed her desire to live with him permanently, believing she would be happier and safer under his care. However, she ultimately returned to Illinois. The last time Jeff spoke with her was on Christmas Day of that same year. Just a month later, Rachel vanished under highly suspicious circumstances. On January 31, 1996, Rachel stayed home from school due to a sore throat. She was alone in the house with her stepfather, Vince, and their German shepherd, Duke. That day, temperatures had dropped to a brutal -20 degrees Fahrenheit. Around 10:45 a.m., Rachel called her paternal grandmother to thank her for Christmas gifts. During the conversation, Rachel suddenly became quiet. When her grandmother asked if Vince was there, Rachel hesitated, then confirmed that he was, before abruptly ending the call. Vince later claimed that after the call, he and Rachel played Nintendo for a while before she went to take a nap. He then stated that at around 2:30 p.m., he took Duke for a walk, leaving the front door unlocked. According to his account, Duke slipped out of his collar and chased a rabbit into a field. Vince claimed he left the dog to find his way home and returned at around 3 p.m. However, when he got back, he allegedly did not check on Rachel. At 3:15 p.m., Rachel's younger half-sibling Ashley arrived home from school and noticed that Rachel was not there. A local real estate agent later found Duke running loose in the street and returned him to the Mellon SKEMP residence between 4:30 and 5 p.m. It wasn't until Amy and Jason arrived home at 5 p.m. that the police were finally called to report Rachel missing. The circumstances of Rachel's disappearance immediately raised suspicion. Her coat, shoes, wallet, purse, and Walkman were all still in her room, making it highly unlikely that she had left the house voluntarily, especially in such extreme weather conditions. However, the blue blanket she had been wrapped in, along with 2 pillows from her bed, was missing. There was no sign of forced entry, leading investigators to believe that Rachel had not left on her own. When police questioned Vince, they noticed multiple scratches and cuts on his arm. He claimed they were from working on a car earlier that day. During their search of Rachel's room, investigators found disturbing entries in her diary. In one entry, from August 1995, Rachel wrote about how Vince had come into her room, kissed her, and touched her, under the guise of teaching her about predators. Authorities also discovered an out-of-print book about father-daughter relationships in the home, along with a steak knife hidden under Rachel's pillow. Despite an extensive search, including ground, air, and water operations using geothermal imaging and drones, no trace of Rachel was ever found. Authorities also checked airports, ensuring she had not run away to Texas to be with her father. But every lead resulted in a dead end. Rachel's father, Jeff, quit his job in Texas and moved to Illinois to assist in the search. He confronted Vince, who insisted that someone must have taken Rachel while he was out walking the dog. Jeff continued to hold on to hope, keeping the same phone number since 1996, in case Rachel ever tried to reach out. In January 2000, a grand jury issued a warrant for Vince's DNA samples. He was held for 9 hours at the Bolingbrook police station, but refused to answer any questions, pleading the Fifth Amendment. He also failed a polygraph test. Amy, on the other hand, passed a lie detector test and continued to stand by Vince, believing that Rachel was still alive. However, the grand jury investigation concluded without any indictments due to a lack of physical evidence. That same year, Amy disposed of all of Rachel's belongings, donating them to Goodwill. Shortly afterward, the family relocated to Joliet, Illinois, and later moved to Tennessee. Vince continued to have run-ins with the law, facing charges for violence and drunk driving. Meanwhile, Jeff and Rachel's best friend Carrie remained active in trying to keep Rachel's case in the public eye. In 2002, the city of Bolingbrook honored Rachel's memory by planting a tree and placing a plaque in a park near her former home. Authorities have repeatedly stated that they firmly believe Vince is responsible for Rachel's disappearance, but cannot charge him without solid evidence. Despite the passage of time, Rachel's case remains open, and her loved ones continue to seek justice. Her father and best friend still fight to keep her story alive, hoping that one day the truth will finally come to light. The mystery of Rachel Mellon remains one of Illinois' most heartbreaking cold cases, with her family and friends longing for answers that may never come. The disappearance of Wesley Dale Morgan remains one of the most perplexing and heartbreaking mysteries in Louisiana's history. On May 15, 2001, the 2-year-old vanished from his home in Clinton, Louisiana, without a trace. His mother, Ruby Renee Havard, was just 19 at the time. Her boyfriend, 37-year-old Bernal Hilton Jr., also lived in the home. According to Ruby, she left Wesley playing with puppies on the front porch while she went inside to prepare pickled eggs. But when she returned, just minutes later, her son was gone. That morning would mark the beginning of a decades-long search, one that has yielded no answers. Authorities immediately launched an extensive search for Wesley, covering a 5-mile radius around the home. Local firemen, corrections officers, neighboring parish officials, and the FBI joined in the effort, scouring the dense Louisiana woods for any sign of the missing boy. Despite their best efforts, no evidence surfaced to explain what had happened. There were no footprints, no signs of struggle, and no clues that could lead investigators in a definitive direction. Suspicion quickly fell on Wesley's mother and her boyfriend. Both failed polygraph tests, raising questions about their involvement. Investigators began considering the possibility that Wesley had not simply wandered off, but had instead been taken, possibly by someone close to him. A troubling theory emerged, suggesting that Ruby may have given her son away or even sold him. This theory gained traction in 2008, when Ruby was arrested for allegedly trying to sell her unborn child for $2,000. Though the charges were ultimately dropped due to a lack of evidence, the accusation cast a long shadow over her role in Wesley's disappearance. In 2012, retired Baton Rouge police officer Richard K. Sowers took an interest in Wesley's case. Frustrated by the lack of progress, he persuaded the FBI to display age-progressed photos of Wesley on digital billboards throughout Louisiana and Mississippi. He also organized community outreach efforts, distributing flyers and attempting to hold a vigil in Wesley's honor. However, some members of Wesley's family were resistant to the renewed attention, complicating efforts to keep his case in the public eye. 15 years after Wesley vanished in 2016, the FBI's New Orleans and Baton Rouge divisions launched a rapid deployment team to re-investigate the case. The reopening of the investigation brought renewed hope, but also painful memories for Ruby. According to her attorney, Rhonda Covington, the fact that this special team is here gives her hope, although it also brings up a lot of memories. A dedicated tip line was established, and the FBI announced a $10,000 reward for any information leading to Wesley's whereabouts. Age-progressed images of him, at ages 12 and 15, were widely distributed, but no significant leads materialized. Despite these efforts, Wesley's case remains unsolved, and his fate remains a haunting mystery. His aunt, Mary Dufour, has spoken about the lasting impact of his disappearance on the family, particularly on his father, Dewey Morgan, who shared custody of Wesley at the time. Dewey has since remarried and had other children, but the pain of losing Wesley has never faded. Sheriff Travis has said that the biggest challenge in the case is the uncertainty. No one knows if Wesley is alive or not. There's been no closure for anybody in this particular case, he stated. Ruby has since built a new life in Louisiana with her husband and 2 daughters, but she maintains her innocence and continues to hope that she will one day be reunited with Wesley. While tensions remain between different sides of the family, they all share a common goal: finding out what happened to Wesley and bringing him home. Despite the years that have passed, Wesley's case remains open, and the FBI continues to offer a $10,000 reward for information. His disappearance remains a mystery, leaving a family searching for answers and a community hoping for a long overdue resolution. The GIZA bandit remains one of the most elusive and mysterious bank robbers in modern history. Between 2009 and 2011, this unidentified criminal carried out 16 bank robberies across San Diego County, managing to disappear without a trace every single time. Despite years of investigation, authorities have never been able to determine who he was or where he went. One of the most puzzling aspects of the GIZA bandit's crimes was his appearance. Witnesses described him as an elderly man, likely in his 60s or 70s, with a frail walk and deeply wrinkled skin. However, investigators strongly believe that this was nothing more than an elaborate disguise. Many suspect that he used a highly realistic latex mask to mislead both law enforcement and the public, hiding his true identity behind the convincing illusion of old age. His first known robbery took place on August 28, 2009, at a US bank in Santee, California. Surveillance footage captured the suspect calmly walking into the bank, approaching the teller, and handing over a demand note. He also displayed a small handgun, though he never physically harmed anyone. What stood out most was his controlled and confident demeanor. He did not appear nervous or rushed. His actions were precise, almost practiced. This led investigators to suspect that he was not a novice, but rather an experienced criminal who had carefully planned his approach. After receiving the money, he walked out at a normal pace, blending into the streets before anyone could react. Over the next 2 years, he repeated this same method in 15 more robberies. Each time, he followed an almost identical pattern, entering the bank, making his demands with minimal words, collecting the cash, and exiting without drawing immediate suspicion. His ability to avoid capture, despite frequenting the same region, left law enforcement both frustrated and fascinated. One of the most significant pieces of evidence left behind was a day planner, which the GIZA bandit accidentally dropped during his very first robbery. Investigators treated it as a critical lead, hoping to extract fingerprints or DNA that could finally identify him. However, forensic analysis has so far failed to produce any conclusive results. Despite the lack of hard evidence, the FBI has remained determined to solve the case. Special Agent James Stinnett, who has spent years studying the GIZA bandits' robberies, believes that his level of criminal sophistication suggests he may have operated under different disguises before or even after this crime spree. With no known arrests and no further robberies attributed to him after 2011, the GIZA bandits' sudden disappearance raises several questions. Some investigators suspect that he simply changed his identity and continued committing crimes elsewhere, adopting a new disguise and strategy. Given his skill in deception, this theory remains entirely possible. The FBI has even analyzed the body movements of recent bank robbers to see if they match the GIZA bandits' distinct gait and habits, hoping that, even if his face has changed, his mannerisms might give him away. Another possibility is that he was arrested for an unrelated crime, one that never connected him to the bank robberies. If he was charged under a different name and offense, his true identity may still be sitting in the criminal justice system, undiscovered. There's also the chance that he left the country to avoid being recognized, or that he passed away, taking his secrets with him. However, history shows that most career bank robbers do not simply retire. They either continue until they are caught, or meet an unfortunate fate. Despite the time that has passed, the mystery of the GIZA bandit remains unsolved. True crime enthusiasts and law enforcement officials alike continue to speculate about his fate. Was he ever caught under another name? Did he escape justice for good? Or is he still out there, possibly reinventing himself once again? For now, the GIZA bandit's true identity remains one of the biggest unanswered questions in modern crime history. Until new evidence emerges, his story will continue to be a fascinating and unsolved enigma, one that leaves both investigators and the public wondering if he will ever be unmasked. On September 3, 2019, Michael Samdas left his mother's home in Hamilton, Canada, before vanishing without a trace. For 4 years, the family searched for answers to this personal mystery before Michael was finally found. Michael was 40 years old at the time of his disappearance. He was one of 5 siblings and part of a close-knit family. His sisters described him as the life and soul of the party. He was extremely extroverted and liked to have a good time. At school, he played sports and considered an art career. Michael ended up working in the family's home renovations and real estate business. His parents had built the business from the ground up after arriving in Canada decades earlier, having migrated from Guyana. Michael kept his interests in sports, playing soccer at Soccer World. He also visited dance clubs with his sisters. It was rare for him to go a day without talking to any of them. But the past few years had been difficult for Michael and the entire family. In 2017, he was attacked at an event and suffered a knock to the head. There didn't seem to be any lasting damage at the time, but shortly after, Michael's family noticed his personality had completely changed. Michael became more introverted and withdrawn. He would talk to himself, sleep in a lot, and didn't care about his appearance, according to family members. He moved into his parents' basement and rarely saw the light of day. There was also a more violent streak, which grew around the same time. The neighbors gave him the nickname Rant because they could sometimes hear him shouting. Some compared it to the story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, considering how much Michael had changed from who he was before. The personality change made it clear that Michael wasn't acting like himself at all, and his family didn't know what was wrong. On multiple occasions, they tried to get him seen by mental health professionals, but each time he was tested, they determined there was nothing wrong with him. In mid-2019, Michael was held at a hospital for a few days, but he was then released. This was shortly before he vanished. Michael was last seen by his mother, as he left her home in the Stony Creek area on September 3rd. It's not clear what his family thought he was going to be doing that day, but they expected him to come home that evening. This didn't happen, and the family tried to report him missing, only to be told that they needed to wait 48 hours. This wasn't and never is true, and that delay cost investigators valuable time. The first 48 hours are the most important in a missing person case, and the chances of finding someone rapidly decrease the longer they're missing. When investigators began the search for Michael, they were already on the back foot. There was little media attention on the case, but the family continued to push to raise awareness. Eventually, it emerged that Michael had been spotted in Toronto, 2 days after he was last seen by his family. On September 4th, he was picked up by the police after getting into a fight with a homeless person. He was charged and held overnight, then released the following day. When he didn't show up for a court appearance, an arrest warrant was issued. The discovery moved the missing person case to Toronto. It was believed that Michael may have been living among the city's homeless population. Michael stood at over 6 feet tall, and his family were confident that he would stand out. For months, Michael's family visited Toronto with photos, appealing for information. There were many alleged sightings, but none of them could be confirmed. The family also heard rumors about things that might have happened to him. At one point, someone claimed a psychic had told them that someone had taken Michael's life, but there is no evidence that this was the case. No sign of Michael could be found, and the family grew frustrated about the lack of publicity his case was receiving. Other missing person cases in the area had gotten national attention, but Michael's case was more limited. Many people in Toronto hadn't heard about the missing person case at all, which meant that there could have been valuable information that nobody realized was important. The family issued a reward of $25,000 for information, and his case was featured on the TV show Never Seen Again, which brought some awareness to Michael's disappearance. A group that helped Michael's family was the Please Bring Me Home charity. The organization is based in Canada and focuses on taking and following up on anonymous tips across the country and into the United States. Even with help from the organization, there was no sign of Michael until May of 2023. The organization used photo recognition technology to help their search. A hit came up when a police mugshot from Florida was uploaded. The mugshot showed a homeless man who did bear some resemblance to Michael. After working with another non-profit organization and the police in the US, the team was able to compare the fingerprints of this man to those on file in Canada. They were a match. This was Michael Samdas. Michael had been picked up in Florida after a violent crime in which he attacked a woman. He was seen carrying with him 2 backpacks, a sleeping bag, and a few personal items, which included ID cards from Canada and Mexico. He gave his name as Asa Baba Nadoba. After the police confirmed that this was the missing Canadian, Michael's family were informed. They had no idea how he had gotten to Florida or why he was there. They also didn't know how to approach the situation and didn't want to scare Michael off again. But some family members traveled down to Florida. When Michael was in court for the attack he had committed, he had no recognition of his family and didn't seem to know who they were. He also didn't respond to the name of Michael Samdas. As part of the process, he saw a mental health professional who confirmed that he wasn't fit to stand trial. For Michael's family, it was a relief to know that he was alive, even though it was obvious he'd been through a lot in the 4 years that he'd been missing. One sister commented that her hope for her brother was that they got back the Michael that she knew. She had changed a lot since 2017. It's hoped that he can now get the mental help that he needs. On the 1st of May, 2022, 32-year-old TAHNEE SHANKS, who was originally from Queensland, Australia, traveled from her home in Mérida, Mexico, to Cancun with her estranged husband, Jorge Aguado, and their 2-year-old daughter, Adeline. They planned to have a holiday. The following day, the family checked out of their hotel, and TAHNEE's white, 4-wheel drive vehicle was spotted by toll road cameras as they headed toward Merida. However, the footage also shows that at around 12 p.m., they made an abrupt U-turn. Then, at around 9 p.m. that night, Carlos Santos, a man who was on vacation with his family, found Tahnee's daughter, LYNN, wandering barefoot outside a church in Cancun. He stated that a man had pointed the girl out to him and promised that he would return soon, but the man never came back. After contacting the police, Carlos began sharing pictures of LYNN on social media. This resulted in her grandmother, LYNN, and LYNN's brother, Ben, recognizing her. A few days later, LYNN was found to be unharmed, and she is now living with her grandparents in Queensland, Australia. Tahnee's car was later found that same night in the town of Puerto Morelos, 25 miles from Cancun. The vehicle was completely burned out, and Tahnee has remained missing ever since. Police believe that the 8-hour period between the afternoon and the evening of the 2nd of May holds the answers to Tahnee's disappearance, as there is no account of what transpired during that time. They have, however, stated that they are working on 2 different theories that they hope will help solve the case. The first theory is that there was an incident between Tahnee and Jorge, and that Jorge is currently on the run, or possibly in hiding, after being involved in her disappearance. The second theory suggests that Jorge may have been involved in illegal activities in Mexico, and that Tahnee may have been abducted by a cartel as payback. In an interview with 60 Minutes, Quintana Roo State Attorney General Oscar Montes de Oca Rosales revealed that Jorge had been threatened by a cartel in the past. On that occasion, he even went as far as hiring a bodyguard as he feared for his life. It also came to light that Tahnee had sent a text to a friend asking her to keep the name Jorge Aguado. She stated that if anything were to happen to her, the police should investigate him. Tahnee's brother Ben has offered a $70,000 reward for any information on the case. However, police advised Ben that a reward might not be wise, as it could lead to an influx of false leads. Yet, despite the significant reward, not a single tip has been received since Tahnee's disappearance. Authorities in Aberdeen, Scotland, are growing increasingly concerned for the safety and well-being of sisters ELIZA and HENRIETTA Husty, who mysteriously vanished on January 7, 2025. The 32-year-old sisters, part of a set of triplets, originally from Hungary, have not been seen or heard from since that day, leaving their family devastated and searching for answers. Their triplet sister, Edith, was among the last people to speak to them before their disappearance. Edith told investigators that their last conversation took place over a video call on New Year's Eve. During the call, the sisters appeared to be in good spirits. However, Edith found it unusual to see them walking the streets of Aberdeen so late at night during the call. The sisters had moved to Scotland 7 years ago in search of new opportunities, leaving behind their home in Hungary. According to their brother, Josef, the last known contact between ELIZA and HENRIETTA and their mother occurred on January 4, 2025. They spoke on the phone for around 40 minutes, and nothing seemed unusual or concerning during the call. Family members described the two sisters as inseparable. They were known for being homebodies who preferred quiet nights cooking and watching movies together over going out. Their close bond makes their sudden and simultaneous disappearance all the more distressing. The investigation into their disappearance revealed that ELIZA and HENRIETTA were last seen on CCTV footage, walking along Market Street near the River Dee in Aberdeen. This area, which includes several commercial and industrial buildings, has become the central focus of the search efforts. Police and search teams are combing through the surrounding areas, including the icy waters of the river, in hopes of finding any sign of the sisters. On January 11, 2025, authorities released the CCTV footage showing the sisters walking near the river in the hope that someone might recognize them or provide information about their whereabouts. Investigators have urged the public to remain vigilant and immediately report any sightings to the authorities. Businesses along South Esplanade and Menzies Road have been asked to review their security camera footage for any possible sightings of the sisters, while motorists who were in the area on January 7th are being asked to check their dashcam recordings for any clues. Unfortunately, no additional leads have been uncovered so far. The sisters were last seen crossing Victoria Bridge before turning onto a footpath that runs along the River Dee. The path appears to lead toward the Aberdeen Boat Club, but it remains unclear if that was their intended destination. Since no further footage of their movements has been found, it's uncertain what happened after they left the view of the cameras. The search for ELIZA and HENRIETTA has been extensive, involving police dogs, members of the Marine Unit, and even helicopters conducting aerial sweeps. Divers have scoured the icy river, but have yet to uncover any significant evidence or clues about what may have happened to them. Police have stated that they will continue speaking with anyone who knew the sisters, in hopes of piecing together their final movements or uncovering any plans they might have had that night. Both women are described as being slim in build, with long brown hair, and authorities are relying on members of the public to come forward with any information that could aid the investigation. Anyone who may have seen ELIZA or HENRIETTA or has information about their disappearance is urged to contact the police by calling the 101 emergency number and quoting case incident number 0735 of Tuesday, January 7, 2025. The family is desperate for answers and hopeful that the sisters will soon be found safe.